really key thing that you mentioned at the beginning was we don't take time out to reflect and to notice and to think. How can we do that in schools, do you think?
I think we need to embed it. We have line management processes, we have those things in place, but they're very much task orientated, aren't they? And I just think even simply adding in a 15 or 20-minute slot at the beginning of a line management meeting with someone where you're not talking about people or tasks, you're talking about what's going on for you. We're not talking about counselling either. I think people get worried that they're going to be seen as having to do any counselling sessions. It isn't that. It is just about holding space. What's top of your list? What's on your plate? What are the things that are keeping you awake at night? What are the things that are genuinely troubling you? And having that opportunity to voice it and to explore that with someone else. And I do, it can be more costly, but I do think having people that have been in the job, it can be really helpful for Senkos to be able to speak to other Senkos. I know that some of the best times as a Senko were when I was in network meetings with other Senkos, and we would kind of sit around and go, oh gosh, yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Yeah, and you could have that connection with people. But I think just building that recognition that to reflect is to learn and to understand. We do it in our classrooms, we do it with our young people, don't we? Or we should be, and it's good pedagogy, but we don't always do it with the professionals. And I think we need to see the long-term aim for those kind of short-term changes that we can make. And sometimes it can feel a bit, I don't know, people might think it is a bit fluffy or a bit woo-woo, but actually building making sure all of your leadership team have coaching skills. That's a really key thing that you can do to give those, because it isn't about having all the answers. It's about being able to hold a space for people to explore those challenges that they are facing. I did coaching subsequent to leaving teaching, actually, and I thought, wow, this would have been an absolute game changer just for my work with teaching assistants. To be able to work with them in that kind of approach would have made a huge difference for them, I know. And yeah, so I think there's something about looking at who is it that talks about atomic habits and stacking habits? We have the habit of line management meetings. Those are things that we do. We're great at having line management meetings, aren't we? But they tend to be to-do lists. How do we stack onto that something that meaningfully, and that's really important, holds a space for those times when things are challenging? Or, maybe it's one every other fortnight line management meeting is actually a safe space for coaching or for reflecting or for what's actually going on, rather than a tick list of jobs. So it's looking at not creating something new, but thinking about what do we already do that we can adapt slightly to really create that space for professionals.
Yeah, I love that, especially because I have a course that's recently come out and it's called 5 Minutes to Thrive. And it's more of a well-being fist bump. So it's 5 minutes at the beginning of a staff meeting. And one of the early feedback comments that come from staff is it's actually quite difficult because I give them 1 minute to discuss with a colleague in the middle of the 5 minutes. It's a pre-recorded thing. And they have to sometimes talk about, for example, what's the impact you've had this week? What positive impact? And what are your strengths? Things like that. And what staff are saying is it's really hard to stop and reflect together. Not talking about data, not talking about displays, but actually talking about you. And that's a really tough thing. But interestingly, head teacher said to me last week, Rowena, I'd love to do your course. 5 minutes a week, fantastic idea. Put it at the start of a staff meeting. But I am so overwhelmed. The thought of 5 minutes extra in my week is beyond what I can handle. And I just thought to myself, that exactly tells us the problem that we've got at the moment. Because we know when you're so overwhelmed and so stressed, your brain goes into a fizz and you can't think clearly.
No, absolutely. You're just in that hypervigilant state of I certainly was in that state where what's going to go wrong next. Very rarely did I stop and go, what's gone right? That's a really, good point you've made, like having the opportunity to reflect on what has gone well, because human nature tells us that we will focus on the negative. That's what kept us alive when we were hunter-gatherers, because we were focusing on the threat and thinking about what potentially was going to make our lives difficult if we were trying to stay alive and eat, etc. But we still do that now in 2026, and actually we should be making time for thinking about what has gone well, strengths-based approach. And that's not just kind of patting yourself on the back for the sake of it, but we learn from those things, don't we? What's gone well? Why did that go well? What did I do in that situation that meant that that was successful? We often don't have the time to break those things down. I do a lot of work in safeguarding, and I think it's even more important in that space to allow teachers. Quite often with safeguarding, with firefighting, aren't we? We're doing those things that keep people safe, without actually then stopping and going, right, what went well in that? What do we need to improve? How do I move forward? What do I learn from this? Because I think sometimes in teaching, we're in this state of everything's got to be perfect. We've got to make it all absolutely perfect. And we get so obsessed with that perfect lesson observation, perfect results, that we forget that's not natural, that's not human. What did go wrong? What can we learn from that? And having that space and being vulnerable and being able to do that is a really important part of developing our skills. It should be basic CPD.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was in a school last week, and the teachers explained to me that when they make a mistake in the classroom, they almost verbally unwind that mistake to the children and how it looks and what they're going to do about it. And the support staff told me they do the same. And then I heard the children doing it. And it was such a powerful model of psychological safety that came right from the top. And, the head teacher was telling me that she makes mistakes and she talks about it in assembly and what she did about it and, the impact of it, and sometimes saying sorry, but sometimes just, adjusting what you do so that you do better next time. And it's such a powerful model, but we don't seem to be able to accept that that is normal life. In a school, we're all going to make mistakes. And actually, one parent at this school said to me, my child comes home from assemblies and they've been taught to think through things so well that they can then tell me what I should be doing better and how I should be treating children with special needs. Or I mean, it was such a powerful thing to see in action. And actually, I haven't seen that in that way. I'm sure it goes on because there are some amazing schools out there, but to see it happening is very exciting.